So Rita, yeah, we were talking a little bit about your background. We're talking about the regeneration programs, and that you'd always been involved in training, learning and development.
Yes.
And then you got involved in very early days in terms of coaching in the UK on one of the first programs that the Coaching Academy ran, and so on. And you said that this was very natural. You realised you'd been doing coaching all the time. When did you make the move, after having helped train, I guess, hundreds or thousands of people coming through the Coaching Academy stores? How and when did you decide to make the move to be again coaching executives going back into the corporate world, or moving into the corporate world? How did that come about?
Well, I think basically for me it was recognising. So you've got to recognise what your strengths are, and I think that's an important thing. So I think at the time there was a lot of discussion and debate about life coaching, and very much there was a lot of emphasis on life coaching as well. And I think one of the things that I recognised was that executives have a life, and so it was an easy blend of my skills between business, management, having obviously been a manager, been a director, chief executive. I knew what that was like, what the challenges were, what the issues of balance might be as well, what the issues were of balancing those sort of relationships that you have, being astute with that as well.
I guess it must be quite refreshing for those executives and those leaders being coached by somebody who understands firsthand what those challenges are, because it's one thing necessarily being a coach, it's another thing necessarily understanding some of the range of conflicts and challenges,
yes.
and some pronounced, some unpronounced.
Yes.
Have you found that that's an advantage?
Yes,
when you're working?
For me definitely it's been an advantage for me, and that's what I realised also as well, is that it's just given me the opportunity to be able to work with people in a more profound way, because I understand. That doesn't mean that I'm not telling them what to do, because I'm a coach, so I'm not working in that way. But what I'm doing is just being able to hold a space for them, so that they are able to talk in that space, and I'm able to coach them and enable them to be able to do what they need to do in the work that they're doing.
And what's it been like working in some of those biggest companies? And I think one of your first corporate gigs was in quite a big organisation, wasn't it? One of the very early corporate gigs.
Yes, like I said, I've done work in PriceWaterhouseCooper, so I've done some stuff in American Express as well with directors there. And I think one of the key things has been just, I think it's easy to kind of feel, oh my gosh, kind of, wow, this is happening. But I think it's just really just remembering who you are and what you do, and what you do best, and why those people have asked you to work with them, and you bring that to the table. And
what's it been like being a woman in the corporate world, a black woman in the corporate world, because you don't see that many black coaches? How has that been? And has that been a challenge? Has it been a mixed blessing? How have you found that in terms of the work, in terms of how you're perceived, and being mindful about some of the challenges that women and people of ethnic minorities sometimes face in the corporate world?
Yeah, I think certainly for me, I feel that I feel that it's been a blessing. I've not felt that it's hindered me or stopped me in any way, and actually, because I'm focused on what I'm here to do, I'm in terms of what I'm passionate about and what I feel my purpose is, then I'm very clear about that. So I work with the people who want to work with myself, and people that those people that are creative. They want to be challenged. They want someone to be provocative. They want someone to challenge them to think differently. And that's what I give. So sometimes that requires somebody who doesn't look like you and is very different from you. But I can, you know, I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, and tell me, I'm curious to know a little bit about what are the issues that particularly affect those in management, those people at those senior positions? You touched on it a little bit before, and what kinds of ways that you find that you actually help them, and is the brief that you're asked to go in there and fulfil true to what actually emerges?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think you have to recognise that, you know, the organisation is the key stakeholder in the coaching, in a corporate coaching context. And so when you're called in, when you're invited in, it is the organisation that is inviting you in, although it would have been instigated by the individual or maybe by their manager, by their line manager as such. So depending on how that actually works, but it's usually the organisation. I think that's something for coaches to be quite mindful of as well. And the relationship that you develop and that particular work that you do with the individual, you know, the director or the senior manager, you know, whoever that is within the organisation, you know, they're a key person in the organisation and they have a key role. And so they have particular business objectives that they have to achieve, and so you have to keep that in mind within the coaching, in your coaching relationship. And so those objectives may well be just purely around the work arena, but as we know with coaching, they can also involve the individual as well, so some individual objectives. So some of those things might be around communications, for example. Some of those things might be around time, just managing their time, dealing with stress as well. So it could be a number of different things. Dealing with conflict, how do they deal with conflict, not only with their teams, but it could be with their peers as well, or with other key stakeholders within the organisation. How to be more politically aware of what's actually going on in the organisation as well, because, you know, none of us are perfect. We all have blind spots. So it's a great privilege and an honour to be working in that way with people who are key decision makers in the organisation.
And so, what would your tips be for those people who, having seen and perhaps watched even your career, and they're keen to coach and they're keen to coach in organisations? What would your tips be?
I would say to them to, first of all, be really clear about what their strengths are. Be really clear about what your strengths are, what you're bringing to the table, because it's very important that as the coach, you're there to support the individual that you're actually coaching as well. I think also as a coach in that particular context, you need to be mindful of the business objectives that the executive is working towards as well. You need to be mindful of some of those challenges, some of those difficulties that the executive may be bringing to the table as well. And yes, just really make sure that you're very businesslike, you're very professional in your approach.
That's great. Well, Rita, I'm going to leave it then. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.